Hello, this is the Linguistic Anthropology final project and my name is Chloe Jo. The language that I have chosen is Tagalog, the reason being that I was always interested in the language. With over 111 dialects and languages in the Philippines, Tagalog is one of the many languages. Because so many languages and dialects exist in the Philippines, Tagalog and English are used as lingua francas. However, there are assumptions that Filipino and Tagalog is the same language. Tagalog and Filipino are two separate languages. There is a difference because the Filipino government wanted to make Tagalog the official language of the Philippines. However, there was backlash from people who didn't speak Tagalog. They didn't believe that Tagalog should be the official language. Therefore, a language that evolved from Tagalog was created and the Filipino government named this the official language, called Filipino. So although a lot of Filipino words come from Tagalog, the vocabulary and structure of Filipino is different than Tagalog. To dig deeper, Tagalog is one of the most spoken languages in the Philippines, with over 50 million speakers in Philippines alone. Tagalog is not only specific to the Philippines, it has spread to countries worldwide. These countries include Canada, Guam, and the USA, as well as the United Kingdom, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. With over 24 million speakers worldwide, Tagalog is the first or second language of many people. It is important to note that Tagalog continues to spread to many countries all over the world. Moving on, let's talk about the different dialects of Tagalog. There are four main dialects categorized by the region where Tagalog is spoken. The first dialect would be the central dialect, focused on the central part of the Philippines. The second dialect would be the southern dialect. An example of this would be the Batangas dialect. The third dialect would be the Marinduque dialect, which is spoken in the Marinduque Island. The last dialect would be the northern dialect. An example of this is the Bulacan dialect. Now that we know the background information of Tagalog, let's dig deeper into the origins of Tagalog. Anthropologists have uncovered fossils and tools from Palawan, Philippines, which date back to 40,000 years ago. This suggests that the Tagalog language has been around since 40,000 years ago. From the history of the Philippines, we can witness the different influences other countries had on the Tagalog language. First example of this would be the influence of the Malay people on the Tagalog language. From historical sources, we have evidence that the Malay people immigrated to the Philippines from Indonesia 2,300 years ago. The Malay people settled into the Philippines, forcing Malay people and Filipino people to use a pidgin in order to communicate with each other. From these frequent interactions, we can see that Tagalog has a lot of loanwords from the Malay language. Not to mention, Tagalog has a lot of Spanish loanwords, which is due to the Spanish invasion. During a time of colonialism, the Spanish invaded and conquered the Philippines in 1565. The Spanish had control over coastal cities like Mindanao and Luzon for trading. Due to trading and commerce, the Spanish people had a great presence in the daily lives of the Filipino people. As a result, a pidgin was created in order to communicate with the Spanish and the Filipinos. Thus, Filipinos used the Spanish words they learned and used them as loanwords in their own language. It is important to see how the Spanish language impacted the Tagalog language. Based on Pipin's Librong Pag-aralan, a book on the Tagalog language that was written in the 1700s, prior to Spanish invasion, the Tagalog language had an intricate number system. Back then, there were only words for numbers 1 through 10. So at 20, you would have to say 2 tens. Tagalog didn't have words to tell time like tomorrow or yesterday. So if you wanted to say 2 days from now, you would say 2 days from now instead of like Tuesday. However, after the Spanish revived, the Tagalog intricate number system and how to tell time was replaced by the Spanish system. Since the Spanish ruled over the Philippines for over 300 years, we can see that the Spanish language influenced Tagalog the most. We can see the impact Spanish has on Tagalog because if you were to have an informal conversation in Tagalog, 40% of those words would be Spanish loanwords. Following history, after the Spanish invasion, the U.S. invaded and took over the Philippines. During U.S. occupation of the Philippines, English school teachers were sent to the Philippines to educate Filipino teachers. As a result, school population increased 5 times, and 1/4 of the population could now speak English. As more and more people learned English, English became a lingua franca in the Philippines. As a result, Taglish, a mixture of Tagalog and English, is the most common language spoken. It is more efficient for Tagalog speakers to use the English word instead of the Tagalog word because the Tagalog word is usually long. Chinese also influenced the Tagalog language. In the 16th century, the Ming Dynasty and the kingdoms in the Philippines had close relationships. As a result of these frequent interactions between the two countries, Tagalog adopted many Chinese words. From the history of the Philippines, we can see that Tagalog has adopted many loan words from a variety of languages that include Spanish, Chinese, Malay, English. Now let's look at Tagalog and its syntax. Tagalog is written phonetically and it uses the Latin alphabet. Unlike Filipino, Tagalog has 5 vowels and 18 consonants. Tagalog has a different sentence structure than in English. In English, a sentence would consist of a subject, a verb, and then an object. However, in Tagalog, it's switched, so it starts off with the verb, and then the subject, and then the object. You can also write a sentence with the verb, an object, and then the subject. When it comes to adjectives and adverbs, Tagalog is different from English too. In English, the adjective and adverb comes before the subject. However, in Tagalog, an adjective or adverb can be placed before or after subject, and a linker like na and nig must be present. In addition, when you're turning a sentence into a question, you simply add the word ba. And lastly, since this is a linguistic anthropology class, let's look into the cultural influence on Tagalog. As a result of centuries of colonial rule, Filipinos have adopted a great sense of kinship. Filipinos value kapwa, which is the Tagalog term for togetherness and family. This can be seen in the Filipino culture of sharing stories with friends, family, and neighbors. The voice qualifiers when talking is usually friendly and loud due to the sense of community Filipinos have for each other. Not to mention the voice characterizers of laughing and giggling. The Filipino culture is one where people treat and talk to each other like family, which is why Filipinos talk to each other in a friendly, teasing manner, just like how families talk to each other. The Filipino culture is a very collectivist society, and they put the needs and pride of their family and their province before the pride and needs of themselves. This collectivist thinking can be seen in haya, a Tagalog term for shame and embarrassment. Therefore, Filipinos speak in a way to avoid shame and embarrassment on their family and town. One way Filipinos do this is to be indirect when they are engaging in conversation. Filipinos would rather talk in a way to not hurt other people's feelings rather than being blunt. Filipinos tend to use passive voice and be ambiguous when talking. They take into account one's expression and tone of voice before talking and replying to other people. This is an example of cultural competence because even if you know the Tagalog language, you need to know the culture. You need to know about haya and kapwa in order to apply your language to social contexts. Because behind the Tagalog language is the Filipino culture and values. And lastly, the nonverbal communication in the Filipino culture is interesting in that there is close physical contact between family members and that they use a lot of voice aggregates like aha and ps. In conclusion, Tagalog is a beautiful language, and you can see the history of the Philippines through looking at the language of Tagalog. You can see the various countries that have settled in the Philippines, and in turn, their language has contributed to the Tagalog language. Thanks for watching.